Can you tell us how, from this beginning of drawing and obviously your parents were supportive of it, and that's awesome. What was the path to get to Howard?
At age 8, Philadelphia Auto Show, that kind of did it for me when I saw the Cadillac Cyclone. And by the time I was 11, I figured out where that car came from, reading those car magazines. So I wrote my first letter to General Motors, asking about careers in design. And they sent me great information. And I stayed in communication with them. I just recently, going through some of my stuff here in the office, I ran across a letter from them when I was age 16, and it was giving me further information.
What kinds of advice were they giving you? And what kinds of information?
They were telling me about the schools that were available. There weren't as many schools of automobile design in that time frame as there are today, and they were not at the same level as they are today. But they were giving me information about design schools. I went to an incredible high school in suburban Philadelphia, in Berwyn, one of the best high schools in this nation. It was then and it is today. But their focus was not on the arts. It was more on math and science. I learned more in math. I learned math in that high school that I've never used since then. So their art program was not as strong. I didn't know that. What did I know? That was my world, the school that I went to. So senior year, I applied to the schools that were on GM's list, and Pratt was one of them. And Pratt Art Center, the Philadelphia College of Art. And it wasn't long before I received, and the thing is with design and art schools, it's not just your GPA, in my case, which was very strong, but your portfolio of work. And I received my first rejection letter, which came from Pratt.
Oh.
Then I received my second rejection letter, and then my third. And then with the Philadelphia College of Art, you had to present your work in person. And I'll never forget, it was a bright, sunny Saturday morning, and all of the candidates had to put their work up on display boards. And as I did that, and I saw the work of the other high school students who were about to graduate, I saw that my work was not nearly as professional as theirs. And I was just stunned. I was rocked. It was almost like I had been in the ring with Muhammad Ali, and I was seeing this mission that I was on starting to fade, because it was like, since I was a little kid, all I wanted to do was be a car designer. And I just saw, this, what am I going to do? And then I sent in a late application to Howard University, and I was accepted there. Howard did not have a major in car design, but their School of Fine Arts was fabulous. Their School of Fine Arts was like the movie Fame. It was visual arts, which was painting and industrial design and sculpture and graphics. It also was drama and music. So my classmates were people like Debbie Allen, Felicia Rashad. Donald Byrd was an instructor there. Wow. And the list goes on and on, people in music and drama and art who were in this school. And we were all classmates. And although they did not have a major in car design, they did everything they could to support me. The sculpture studio allowed me to do work that was more automotive. Industrial design really helped me as well. And I stayed in communication with GM, and and GM recommended that I apply to the summer internship program.
Wow.
So I sent in 2 applications to the summer intern program.
Now, what year are we talking about approximately?
That would have been 71.
Okay.
I sent in 2 applications, one as a designer and one as a sculptor. And because I was getting into that program one way or another.
Yeah.
Though my end game was, to be a designer. They accepted me as a sculptor. And so my foot was in the door. And I spent 10 weeks at GM in a summer program. The summer program had 10 designers and 2 sculptors. To be honest, it was a mismanaged program. And there was nothing for the sculptors to do for the first 7 weeks of this 10-week program. So I spent the whole summer with GM designers, just learning from them, just honing my whole craft as a designer. At the end of the 10-week program, I was called into the office, and Chuck Jordan told me, we just want you to go back and finish your senior year at Howard. We want to hire you as a designer.
What a feeling that must have been for you.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that coming? Had they foreshadowed any of that to Chuck?
No. I just figured, I'd pick up all this stuff. I'd learn, go back senior year, just continue to push, and apply as a designer. But, that last day when they called me and everyone's packing up stuff to leave, and trying to pack up as much supplies as they could put into these boxes they gave us.
Sure.
Meanwhile, so instead of doing that, I was in the office with the bosses and them telling me what they wanted me to do. And I'll be honest with you, I've never hit an interview for a job. Because the way that happened, I've never really had an interview. Yeah.
Wow.
Job interview. So.
Can we back up for 1 second about to that point at the Philadelphia School of the Arts, I believe it was, or Philadelphia?
Yeah.
That moment, and I'm thinking of young people who might watch this video. You thought your dream was fading from you, and you reached inside, obviously, and what I talk about that, how you kept yourself going.
It's like I had really been hit hard, and I was just stunned, and it was difficult to drive home even afterwards. But
were they harsh in their critique?
They didn't have to say much to be harsh. My own critique was harsh. Okay. It was eye-opening to see the work of the other students who had come from schools that had a much more complete curriculum in art. Mm-hmm. And here I am with all this math, and my sketches were not that good. They were not, there had not been that much study behind it. And by the time I got home, I was starting to clear my head and, I was really wondering what I was going to do, but my head was getting clear. And my cousin just happened to come by, who lived a block away from us. His name is Clark Welburn. And he was a student at Howard University. And he said, well, why don't you apply to Howard? So I quickly did that and moved on from there. But there's so many times when things happen, a sketch that you do that isn't very good, but there might be something in that generates an idea for something even better, or an experience that may not have been the most positive, but you learn from it. And I learned from that experience, those applications where I feel, by the way, years later, I was given an honor at Pratt.
that feel good.
I'm sitting there, it's me and Walter Cronkite receiving awards from Pratt.
Wow.
And in my acceptance speech, I reminded them and how that school had declined my application.
They passed on the great Ed Welburn. Amazing. Wow. So you go back to school after your conversation with Mr. Jordan, and you finished up your senior year.
Yeah.
Talk about being boarded into General Motors Design, joining the staff.
There are a couple things. Chuck decided to give me one last test, my senior year, the spring of my senior year. And he wanted me to create some sketches quickly. You know, you remember back then, you did not have the internet. You couldn't email stuff and all that, you know, you had to
Right.
mail, you know, and he wanted something really quick, some sketches from me. It was
Yeah.
a little test. And it was like, wow, I'll never forget it because it was the day of the Indy 500. And I turned on my radio to listen to the 500. And I started sketching, and there was a magazine opened up, that photograph of the Chaparral 2H, the one that's shell oil head, you know, where you're looking down on the front view. And that became the inspiration for a whole series of sketches that I did. And I did it all that day while listening to the 500. And I have no idea who won the race, but I felt victorious when I finished that packet of sketches, wrapped it up, and the next day put it in the mail to Chuck. And he really liked what I'd done. And so, you know, graduated, wanted me to start in September, not in June. It was an interesting period because as soon as I graduated, now this is the height of Vietnam, all of a sudden my student deferment was up. I got drafted, and I back to Philadelphia for the physical and failed the physical. They said, I'm sorry, son, you don't, you know. So there was that. And then I was off to GM. Before I left to go to GM, I met with Reverend Leon Sullivan, who was on the board and was a minister in Philadelphia. And it was like going to see The Godfather. I mean, very much like that scene, you know. And I sat across this huge desk from him, and he gave me great counsel before I left for GM. And